Here's the implications for the workforce. This is recent projections done for our institute by 3 demographers out of the University of Guelph. Sometime around 2046, there will be 315,000 fewer workers in Atlantic Canada. 100,000 in each of Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and 15,000 fewer in Prince Edward Island. To put that in perspective, the workforce in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick today is right around 420,000, 440,000 people. So we're talking about losing 1 in 4 workers. Now think about that from the perspective of their capacity to rent your space, how much you're going to be expected to pay in municipal taxes and provincial taxes and federal taxes to maintain the service levels that the aging population is going to ask and demand, quite frankly, because there's more of them than there is of us. So think about that. 1 in 4 fewer workers to pay bills that are probably going to be twice as big. Here's another implication, zero unemployment. So any of you who haven't automated by now, automate soon. Because we're talking about zero unemployment by about 2016. Zero unemployment means there's nobody to take your jobs. If you create a new facility and you need somebody to run it, you won't be able to find anybody to take the job because they'll be working somewhere else. But that doesn't mean there aren't going to be people unemployed. Zero unemployment basically means what's called frictional unemployment. It's about 3%. So people who are just totally incompetent, or their employers can't keep up with them, or they've had sickness or what have you. So a 3% frictional rate means they're moving from job to job. But zero unemployment. Now, for those of you who kind of say, how can we reach zero unemployment? There's no way we're going to reach that. Let's think about this. Halifax's unemployment rate, on average, over the last 5 years, has hovered around 5%. That's only 2 percentage points higher than effective zero unemployment. So we're pretty close now. And Halifax isn't all that far off from St. John, and St. John's is quickly catching up with the rest of us. So we're pretty close to this break point now. What happens in zero unemployment? Nobody drives a truck, nobody picks the produce, nobody manufactures the car, nobody buys the car, nobody sells the car. Think of the economic disruption when you literally can't find people to do jobs that get done. Think of the service levels now in the McDonald's and the retail stores and the wholesalers. They are already reaching out to people they would never have employed 5 years ago because they have no choice. And it's going to come to you, and it's going to come to you in a big way. Minutes, that's not bad. Here's another implication. Because, of course, all economic activity, even self-storage economic activity, depends on an economy that's robust and growing. Here's the potential implications for overall economic activity measured in GDP. So, this is a projected value of output and output per capita for the Atlantic region from 2006 to 2046. Now, this assumes a couple of things. It assumes constant labor productivity. In other words, we haven't been able to improve our productive capacity per worker. They're not able to produce more things than they were yesterday. It also assumes what's called population projection A. Population projection A comes out of the report on which this is based, but basically it says we actually are growing our population faster than we currently are. It's the rosy picture. So this is an assumption that we can actually maintain our productivity and grow our population faster than we currently are now. Even under that scenario, our GDP will fall, and our output per capita will also decline over that same period. Here's how bad that could get. 2046, Newfoundland and Labrador, 57.9% of current GDP in 2046. So that's a 40% decline in the size of their economy. The amount of money that's kicking around, people working, the things that they're buying, their resources to purchase and store things. The Atlantic region as a whole, an economy 3/4 the size we have today. So again, think about the disruptive nature when you can't find people to work and you have 25% of your productive capacity is gone. The income's not there, the tax base isn't there, the productive services aren't there. So, this is where we get into the solutions. So, of course, there are 3 solutions. So, just like the 3 R, there are 3 Ps. You have population, you have participation, and you have productivity. The good news out of all this is that government knows about these problems. AIM's first study on this exercise was 15 years ago. Everybody else has come on board since. And so there are active solutions being pursued in this area. Problem being that none of them by themselves can solve the problem, and even combined, we'll be lucky if it mitigates the problem, let alone solves it. Let's talk about population. Remember how I told you that they'd have to repopulate New Brunswick basically on a 10-year cycle? Our current population growth rate, immigration, outmigration, over the last 25 years is a net minus 0.3%. In other words, over the last 25 years, on average, the population of Atlantic Canada has declined 0.3% a year for 25 years. In order to just sustain the level of population we have today, we would have to have annual growth rates around 4%. So how do you translate a negative into a positive? So you'd have to basically somewhere around 4 or 5 times our current immigration levels. When the government of Nova Scotia, which they're going to announce in a couple of weeks, says that they're going to try to get 9,600 immigrants a year for the next 10 years, based on a history of around 1,200, they're serious. God knows how they're going to do it, but that's the kind of targets that they're going to have to pursue. And here's the problem. The population growth will have to come from immigrants, or certainly a significant portion of the population solution will have to come from immigrants, because we've also set up our own domestic time bomb. This is what they call a population pyramid. On the right is women, and on the left is men. And then you see the age 0 to 5, 45 to 50, 90 and over. So from 1966, Atlantic Canada and Canada looked quite similar. We had a good chunk of folks in the middle, nice balance between men and women, a good group coming behind us to replace them as they got older. Things were looking rosy. Here's the projection for 2046, significantly top-heavy, and regrettably, my apologies to the women in the room, but weighted to the right. There are going to be more women than men. This has implications because it means that there's more difficult capacity finding a partner and having children. And so as a result, we've got significantly older population. We've got a population that's imbalanced. The Chinese imbalance is to the left, so they have more men than women, so their men are single and can't find spouses. We're going to have the opposite problem. We're going to have more women than men. That might be great for individuals because you get to be more selective, but the problem, of course, is going to be that that slows the replacement population trend. So population isn't going to work. We're not going to be able to, in the time available to us, either replace ourselves by immigration or by increasing our local birth rate, despite the fact that many provinces, like Quebec, are starting to pay baby bonuses. And by the way, if you think Quebec is nuts with the baby bonus thing, 2 years ago they actually stopped their population decline almost directly in correlation to the time frame, the time lag that would have happened from the introduction of the baby bonus to the first round of births. So it works. It's not ideal, but it does work. And by the way, if you think Canada is unique in that, the Russians have a national holiday where the government actually encourages you to go out and procreate. They call it what do they call it? The current name, I think, is the Day of Love, is what they currently call it. So we're not the only ones that are experiencing this. All right, so population isn't going to solve the problem. Can we do it by participation? There are lots of groups in our current economy who aren't represented in the workforce. Or are underrepresented significantly in the workforce. Here in Atlantic Canada, and quite frankly, pretty much systemically across the globe, we have the same general pattern. Women are still significantly underrepresented in the workforce. Not as badly as it was 40 years ago, but they are still underrepresented in the workforce. There is an opportunity to grow that. Aboriginal communities, the dropout rate and the unemployment rate in Aboriginal communities is somewhere around 4 times more than in mainstream Canada. Indigenous black communities, it's the same sort of exercise. Way more dropouts, way more unemployment than is justifiable, and far more than we can allow to continue in an economy where we need every worker working. Recent immigrants is the same sort of exercise. We run out there and we try to recruit 9,600 new people a year, and unfortunately we do very little to give them the cultural and language training they need to get out of their house and into the workforce. So all of those areas, absolutely, we can improve the participation rate. As you can see with this slide, it just demonstrates the fact that interventions, targeted interventions, do work. In 1976, for example, in Prince Edward Island, women's participation rate in the workforce was 35%. It's now 76%. It's still considerably lower than males. I think the male number is around 90%, but it's twice what it was. So if we think about it, if we target it, if we go after it, we can improve it. The problem is that in order to respond to the coming demographic crunch by participation rates increases, in other words, getting everybody to work, we would literally have to find everybody who's not working and put them to work. And that would still only solve about 25% of the impending pressure. So there's a lot of them out there. Absolutely, it's in their best interest and our best interest to find a way to get them to work, but it's not going to solve the problem. Well, what about productivity? If we just improve the productive capacity per capita, things will get better. Well, problem being twofold. One, we are terrible at trying to improve productivity per worker. The ability of the government or the private sector to find ways to increase the productive capacity per worker, the amount of money that they create, the amount of product that they create that they can sell, is abysmal. We've done a terrible job of it. These numbers, this slide demonstrates the productivity improvement that is required to maintain output and output per capita at the 2006 levels, assuming reasonable population growth. So again, this is again assuming that our population is going up, that things are rosy on the population side and the participation side, and we still need to increase productive capacity. And this is only to maintain a 2006 economy. This isn't to make it bigger. This is to maintain the economy we have. Our current productivity improvement has averaged around 1% a year. In order to keep the 2006 level economy, we'd have to double that rate. So again, when someone comes and tries to sell you an automated system to run your self-storage, that's a way to increase productivity per capita, right? Because if you divide something by zero, you get you get a zero, but you don't have a worker, right? So the productivity, the income that you're producing without a body is one way, is considered a productivity enhancement tool. And that will become increasingly a reality. It won't be an exercise where you get to sit in your office and decide whether that's what you want to do or not. It will be, if I want to be in this business, that's what I'm going to have to do, because there is no other way. But even with all those reforms, we'd have to double and triple our rate of productivity just to maintain our 2006 economy. Remember, that's just to maintain our 2006 economy. We've been used to 2% growth a year. To maintain that growth rate, we'd have to multiply our productivity enhancements 6 and 8 times what it is today. And remember, the federal government has spent billions of dollars in the last 10 years trying to improve productivity and hasn't changed it one iota. So billions of dollars spent with no improvement, and we have to multiply it by a factor of 8 in a series of 5 years.